Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to WikiTree Symposium and WikiTree Day 2023. My name is Sandy, and I am very excited to introduce to you the one and only DNA chef, Meli Alexander. This is really exciting for me that you're here, Meli, so welcome.
Thank you so much. This is really exciting.
And I love your name. I love the company name that you've done because as Melly and I were talking a little bit beforehand, who, as genealogists, do not love their DNA and researching DNA, and we got to eat while we do it. So, if you know me and you know my crew, that's you probably see them in chat already. We're Appalachians and we eat. I got my biscuit signed back for this show and this show only for WikiTree Day. So, I'm so thrilled that you're here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for accepting the invitation to join us and talk a little bit about cultures and food and DNA and travel and genealogy. So, Melly, tell us a little bit about you. You're in your company.
Well, again, my name is Meli Alexander, and I am the DNA chef. And during the first year or so of the pandemic, when I really got into the whole genealogy group, and especially in Twitter and social media, I wanted to figure out what I could contribute, what I can offer to people. And most people don't know that I graduated from culinary school back in 2005 with honors in Seattle. And I love food more than anything. I love traveling. I love going to different places around the world and trying restaurants and going to grocery stores and finding any kind of food souvenirs just to kind of reflect the way I feel about a particular place. And I figured, why not combine the two, my passion for genealogy and my passion for food. And so the DNA chef came to me like, I don't know, 2:00 one morning.
That's really best, right? That's our best thinking in the middle of the night when we should be sleeping. But how brilliant. Genealogy and food. I mean, that is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love food? Who doesn't have family recipes? Who doesn't want to learn more about their genealogy through food? And so I figured, maybe I'm not a complete expert, but I have a lot of passion for it, and I love to learn along with other people, and this is what I'm here for.
I think this is great. And I will tell you that if you follow Melanie on social media, that's where I found her. And that's when I reached out to her and said, please, please, please come on our show. I know that I'm going to offer bingo, and it sounds silly to offer bingo with DNA Chef, but please do it. She came up with some fantastic words for the bingo as well. The bingo game will be played at the end of this show, and it's just one this time, guys. It's just one during WikiTree Day. If you have won at all during bingo this year outside of this weekend, you are eligible to win again. If you've already won this weekend, then you are not eligible to win, or somebody in your home has won this weekend, you're not eligible to win. But I am so excited to talk a little bit more when we bring up the bingo on the words and how they relate to us and how food is such an important part of our genealogy research. It really is. Now, we had your travel last night, and one of her items was connecting in the culture. And the way that you connect into heritage culture was through the food. And so you are the perfect companion to come to bingo and talk to us a little bit about that. I want to ask everybody watching just one quick question. So, give me the one dish or one food item that let's say your grandmother, could be your grandmother, grandfather, let's say that made, that you love and adore, and you just got to have. That is your heritage. That is your genealogy. That's through your DNA, and that is your culture. So if everybody will tell us that one particular dish, I will tell you that my one particular dish from my grandmother is just this very, very simple. We were poor, so very, very simple, clear broth potato soup that had potatoes. If we were lucky, it had carrots and celery in it. But there was the love that she put in it that she made. I will tell you, everybody else in my family will say her fried chicken. She died with that recipe. So, Melly, what about you? What would be the one that you would think of?
All right, for me, people need to understand that my maternal grandmother is from New Brunswick, Canada, and she has a lot of English, Scottish, Irish ancestry. So she had a tendency to not cook the most gourmet foods.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it was a little overcooked here, overcooked there, whatever. But she came up with this idea about having this shrimp and curry dish for the holidays It was probably, I
Oh.
don't know if she found the recipe from a box or something, because, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, it was all about whatever the recipes were, the back of a box or a can or whatever. And she added curry powder and mushrooms, and it became this huge hit in our family. It's like every holiday, Easter, Thanksgiving, we would go just bananas because we love seafood in our family. And so that was pretty much the only real recipe that I would consider a family recipe, just because, like I said, she kind of overcooked a lot of things, unfortunately. But of course, that kind of was like the catalyst for me to wanting to go to culinary school, because I wanted to learn how to cook properly. And I'm so glad I did. You know, especially when I learned French cuisine. Oh my God,
the butter.
Yeah, it was so great. I was like, this is how you're supposed to cook. Okay, now I understand.
But you know, you just pointed on something very important. So I just asked everybody what their favorite memory of their food is, and we're getting lots of great answers too. I'm adding to the screen, guys, because they're really, really good. But we can also create our own recipe. We can also have, like you mentioned, you went to school, so we can also bring that for our descendants as well. So we're not just talking about heritage and ancestry that's past. This is something we can do as well and create the recipes from the past we could document, but we can also do our own. And let's go ahead and get started with something that I love from Melanie. You have the top 10 culinary genealogy topics. And let's take those one by one. And I'd like everybody to kind of think about this as she goes through it. Think about what you do in your life with when we talk about this, but also next year travel is going to be even more important to us. We're going to get out and about more. We're no longer locked down. More areas around the world are not locked down. So as we go through this, I want you guys to think about your genealogy that you're doing now, the food you're going to cook tonight or tomorrow morning for breakfast, and where you're traveling as well. So, okay, Meli, take it away. What's your first one?
So my first one is DNA results. So that will tell you, if you have no idea what your ancestry really is, it'll give you a more accurate display of what you are or what the DNA results think you are. So, I mean, it depends on which DNA test you take. I'm not going to name any favorite DNA tests. I'm not going to play that. I think some more accurate than others. Again, I'm not going to name names. But there's one in particular, and they just had a recent update, and it really reflected my ancestry in probably the most accurate way that I've seen so far, which made me really excited. And so part of that ancestry is just my French ancestry. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, French food is always fantastic. It really is.
It really is.
It really is. I mean, who doesn't love French food? For me, I think that if you took a DNA test for the first time and your family really is not really familiar with what their DNA is in the first place, it'll give you an interesting opportunity to kind of learn through a particular new culture through food, whether it's trying a restaurant or, you know, finding something in the supermarket, taking a cooking class. I mean, there's so many different ways, or going to the library and getting a cookbook to reflect that ancestry and say, hey, this recipe looks really easy. Let me try it. And then this is like an opportunity for you to really taste the place, to kind of say, hey, you know, I wonder if my ancestors had something similar to this. You know, did they enjoy this? Did they hate this? Did they do something to adjust the recipe or whatever? But for me, I think that's like the first thing that you should do is just really look at your DNA results and go, I didn't realize I was 2% Swedish or 5%. Whatever, it doesn't even matter, because all the food is good.
I think you're right. Meli and I were talking beforehand, and some of you know this story from me too, that the reason why I took a DNA test a very, very long time ago when they first came out is because all throughout my life, anybody who met me, my best friends, you know, my coworkers, everybody said I was Italian. You're Italian. And I thought, oh, cool. Let me find out what part of Italy I'm from, because I was convinced of Southern Italian. That was just in my mind. I have no idea why. Hadn't been there, hadn't researched it. It was just in my mind. Get the DNA test and eat. You know, there's none. There's not even a trace of Italian. There's a lot of Scottish and a lot of German in there. So I was like, okay. And that is what set off my curiosity to go to a German restaurant. So you're exactly right. When you even find that you might have even a trace, explore it through food.
Exactly. And speaking of Germany, I'm sure I have deep German ancestry, probably over 500 years old. When I was in Dusseldorf about a decade ago, all I wanted to eat was schnitzel. Schnitzel. I swear to God, I've had it like 3 different restaurants.
It's like you got to compare each one.
And it was all good.
There's got to be something in us, don't you think? That's where our DNA triggers and says, you're here, explore, do it, try the schnitzel.
Exactly. And I also went to a Chinese buffet and I couldn't read any of the signs, explain it. It's huge. It was in Hanover. And I'm like, I don't know what any of this stuff is because I don't read any German whatsoever, but it all looks delicious. So it's their German take of Chinese food. So I ended up getting sushi because I could recognize the sushi.
Now I will say, I think you were more of an adventurous eater than I am.
I'm very adventurous. It took a while. Hong Kong is a good example. I went there a long time ago, arrived by the hotel, 9:30 at night. There was a night market nearby. My ex-husband and I went, and we're walking around the restaurants and some guy pulls us in a restaurant, just random. We're like, are we going to die? What's happening here? You're going to eat here. Sure, why not? I'm hungry.
Why not? I'm hungry.
Sure, why not? And the first time I saw shrimp with heads on it. And I didn't know how to handle that.
I see that we do have a couple others that are adventurous too that are for
Yay, Christine. Okay,
Karen,
cool.
I had pickled tongue sandwich for lunch made for my grandma. Is that today, Karen? Yes. But she does bring up a point. I do believe we inherit our taste from our ancestors, and it's carried down the food that we eat, but there's always that, like you said, there's that little bit of DNA that something makes us curious and adventurous. So the number 2 is like my love. Your number 2 on your list, I will go to Goodwill. I'll go to yard sales. I had to give up a large collection of them because it was taking over my house. Yes, it's cookbooks.
Who doesn't have a cookbook? Come on. Everybody's got at least one or 1,000 or I don't know how many I have anymore. I had to really
love cookbooks. Love them.
But cookbooks are amazing because depending on who's writing them, they will clearly explain how to create a recipe. They will clearly explain just your mise en place, which is preparing everything, getting everything measured and whatnot before you actually start cooking. And that's the number one thing about learning a new recipe. Prepare.
Yeah.
Measure everything, put everything out, get a cute little tray, put everything out in cute little bowls, make it an event, especially if you've never really cooked that particular recipe before. Read the instructions twice. Seriously. Read the instructions, prepare everything, read the recipe again, because you never know what they're going to throw in there without adding it to the ingredients list, because it happens more often than you think it does. And then have fun. I mean, that's the whole thing about it. It's cooking has always been my passion. I mean, I made my own ice cream flavors when I was 5. It's vanilla ice cream's boring.
Let's do something.
Or vanilla ice cream, nah. Oh, there's a jar of maraschino cherries in the refrigerator.
I'm put that in there.
I make ice cream.
It made ice cream. I think you need to come to my house. We just got a new air fryer. So you got to come to my house and we need to make recipes together. I think we live on different coasts though. That's the only problem. But cookbooks, they are important. And we did have a cookbook presentation yesterday as well. And they kind of explained how, especially if they're handed down, if it's a church, a cookbook, for example, those are things that are community based. And if you're from a particular community, you might have a large concentration of culture. My husband his family's from Minnesota, where his Swedes all came and stayed. And their community cookbooks from way, way, way back from churches are all these really detailed Swedish recipes that they brought from the homeland here. Now, they made them quite easy. And that's why I agree with you, Meli. It is so important. Read it twice. keep reading it, make sure you have everything on a nice tray so you can see it. It's visible. All the ingredients are there, because sometimes the older recipes are a little tricky. They're not just open up a can and dump it.
Right.
We're talking about really making some hometown recipes as well. And then you had to mention The Joy of Cooking. We saw that book. I mean, that's just fabulous.
Yeah, it was the new edition that finally came out, and I was preparing to get married to somebody, so I wanted to become like the perfect wife.
Yeah.
Cookbooks, everything, just to kind of nest, as my mother would put it. But for me too, it's or I keep magazine clippings from Women's Day, Family Circle, or things I cut from the back from a box, for instance, and just keep it all in one place so I have it. And of course all the notes, because like I said, I'll go through a recipe and I'll think, nah, that's not going to work. I mean, one of my superpowers, I can taste recipes in my head.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's one of these superpowers that I have. And so if somebody can describe a dish and say, oh, I went to this restaurant and I had this really amazing thing. And so I'll say, hey, you know what? Describe it to me. Tell me.
Yeah, and tell you what it tastes like.
Yeah,
I think it's important too that we're missing the one lady that is probably really, really important to the culinary world in her cookbook, Miss Julia Child, as well. And I know a lot of people have talked about her. The thing that I like about Julia Child is something you've already kind of mentioned. Just try it.
Yep.
She was not this established gourmand that knew how to cook, but like you said, she knew how to taste.
She did. She was a genius and one of my heroes. I mean, I have a whole list of heroes. I could, spend an hour and a half listing all my culinary influences, but Julia Child is definitely up there on the top. I loved watching her show as a kid on PBS, and she's sorely missed.
You bring up something too. I remember as a kid watching PBS shows, and at a certain point, I guess cartoons were off, or either at a certain point I was too old for cartoons. And then the only option, I'm dating myself here, the only option was to watch, whatever came on after cartoons. I can't even tell you, or turn over to PBS and watch cooking shows. And it was the cooking shows for me, without a doubt. And you probably will be able to refresh my memory better than I can, but I think it was Justin, the Cajun cook, or there's this older gentleman that cooked Cajun.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
that voice, and then the Julia Childs, and I remember, and the Natalie Dupree's that we had down in the South that has her 2 ingredient biscuits. So, I adored all those PBS cooking shows, and to the point that now they're starting to come back, and the old ones are coming back, and I love that.
Yeah, it's great. I'm addicted to the Food Network, by the way. So.
That's true. Thank you, Justin Wilson. I had a feeling.
Mr. Wilson. Okay, yeah, of course. Yeah.
I loved his voice. I loved his cooking. I loved his expressions. I loved everything that he did. I had none of his equipment to cook with.
Yeah.
I still enjoyed it. Let's talk about your third one. What's your third topic?
One of my favorite things in the whole wide world that eats at my budget: restaurants. I love restaurants. I love traveling and going to different restaurants. London is amazing. I haven't been to London in over a decade, but their Indian food is to die for. That's the best Indian food I've ever had in my entire life, is in London. There was a restaurant in Notting Hill that I went to a long time ago, and I swear to God, it just felt like the service was just second to none, and it was like this big Indian feast with my ex and his family, and it was an event for us. I mean, it made us really feel special, and it made us really feel like we're really getting the whole experience for Indian cuisine, and one of the best meals I've ever had in my entire life, for sure. And Salt Lake has some pretty good restaurants. That's eating my budget, whatever. But it's my new city. I moved here about 5 months ago, and I need to check out the restaurants. Explore it.
And I think it's really interesting. You mentioned Chinese food. I remember going to Chinatown in San Francisco, and there's
Ooh.
lots of restaurants that you could go to. And I do not know how, but my husband and I stumbled down an alley and around the corner from the main drag upstairs. And there's this restaurant, and they're like, come in, wooden tables, old wooden tables. They're, not fancy, not one thing on the wall or anything like that. They come to you, they tell you the menu. They didn't have a menu. And to this day, every time we go
That's
to San
hardcore.
Francisco, that's where we go because it's authentic. Now, if I go to a chain restaurant, and I really, really like some chain restaurants, I'm okay with that. But I like supporting the independents as well. I like knowing the owners. I like knowing the chefs there because if you get a rapport with them, they like knowing what you like, and they become family because we're talking over food. And when you talk over food, you become family, you become friends, you get to know each other a little bit more. So when you had restaurants there, I think most people might be surprised, but I get it. I totally get it. If you find a restaurant where you really like it, the service is good, you become friends with the wait staff as well. It just becomes this experience as if it's a second home. It's almost home cooking, might be a little better in some homes, than mine, but it's an experience. And when you travel, you got to try out the restaurants.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And a good example, to get to know the owners. Right before I left Los Angeles, I lived pretty much across the street from the Sunset Grill, which is right on Sunset Boulevard. Okay, so everybody knows the Sunset Grill from the 80s. Blah, 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 blah. So new owners took over it recently, and they're Hungarian. And their menu was completely revamped. I mean,
oh no, really?
Their food was to die for. It was not expensive. I mean, considering, where this restaurant is located. And they'll talk to you about the food and say, yeah, this is my grandmother's recipe. And thinking, I can't believe I'm moving now. I want to go to this restaurant once a week because there's always something new to try on this menu. And I'm sure that a lot of people are now going there now that's getting more popular, I think. But I never really went to a Hungarian restaurant before. And this was a really good opportunity for me to really try authentic Hungarian cuisine. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to talk to the people that work there. And they said, everything's fresh. And I mean, yeah, it's probably one of the best restaurants in LA right now.
And you remember that. You'll remember that forever. You'll remember the experience. You'll remember the taste. The food. Food brings back a lot of the memories, the sensors that we have, and who we were with, what the event was, things like that. So sadly to say, even bad food will probably do that.
God, bad food you'll remember.
If you've had food poisoning or something, you will remember that. You will also remember that restaurant. You probably will not be back, but it's okay. It's a memory, and we're still talking about food as we go along.
Exactly.
So the next one to me is a little controversial because some people consider this next word snobby, but it's not. It's foodies.
Foodies, yeah. I've been called a food elitist.
Yeah.
Food snob.
Yeah.
I've always been a foodie my entire life. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, and we had really good Italian, Chinese, Mexican, and a little bit of Greek restaurants to choose from. And of course, I spent a lot of time in New York City. And I think by the time I was about 12 or 13, I got curious to more cuisines because all I ever wanted to do, when I lived in New York or visited New York after my parents got divorced, I just wanted to go to Chinatown all the time, every single time, like clockwork. And my father was like, no, you gotta stop this. Let's go to a Korean Japanese restaurant. I said, okay, sure.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I tried japchae. I tried green tea for the first time, and my mind just went.
And this was before it was cool, probably, right? Before
absolutely, way before it was cool to be a foodie. Yeah, and it just kind of just opened up my eyes and my taste buds to go. Okay, you go to Chinese restaurants all the time, blah, 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 blah. You need to try something different. And I'm so glad he put his foot down. So we're not going to Chinatown. We're going to Midtown Manhattan. We're going to a Korean Japanese restaurant, and that's that.
But that's the start. That was your start. You realize I like different food. I like different cultures. Why not explore it and be a little bit adventurous and try it? I will say, my son, who when he was younger, was just give me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's it. That's it. And then when he got into high school, he started going to all these restaurants I've never even heard of. Once your kid gets a car, they go exploring and they come back with great stories. And I think there's something in us when we're that age, we're younger, and there's something in us that's more brave and adventurous. And when we get older, we also have more disposable money in our brain. He's not paying for a house payment and things like that. So he went and explored just like you did and said, let me try it. And spicy or sweet, and you start to also, I think, as a foodie, determine what your tastes are. I know that you will like everything, but you also like very spicy food as well.
God, yes. So, Thai food. I love it all. Korean food. I love Korean food so much. And I wish I could find a good Korean restaurant here in Salt Lake. And I haven't really been able to do that yet. Give me kimchi anytime. I'm not kidding. It's like you go to Trader Joe's and you get like a little thing of kimchi.
You do, yeah.
I'm having my snack because kimchi's awesome. I love spicy food. My stomach doesn't like it so much anymore. But my brother, he loves spicy food too. And thank God.
Because you guys are having that a lot. Okay. Now, probably my favorite, though. I love cookbooks. That was really high up on my list. But this next one is pretty cool to me. And it is travel.
Travel. Who doesn't love to travel?
I know, especially now we want to get out. We want to move around. So when we do that, even if you go an hour or two from your house, you got to travel and taste the food.
Yes.
It's different everywhere.
It is. And that's what makes it so great. Even if you're traveling to just another state or even just a couple of hours away, even like a different climate, say, Salt Lake's the high desert. But if you go into the mountains, you're going to see a little bit of different cuisines. You're going to see kind of a shift in things. And that's what's really fun about it. It's like you go to a restaurant and you're in a cute lodge, you're in the mountains, and it's all peaceful and quiet. And then you see maybe something like venison, for instance.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I love venison. You're not going to particularly find that here in Salt Lake City proper. But outside of Salt Lake, you're probably going to find something heartier and just more local, and that's what makes it so much fun, for sure. And of course,
you have a great story about a photo that you mentioned with your travel with Italy, I believe it is, where you mentioned seeing a photo of your grandfather, I should say, drinking a beer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my grandparents used to travel a lot, and there's a photo of my grandfather, and I can't remember who else is in the photo. And he has a boot-shaped glass full of beer. And I was like, I was a kid when I saw the photo for the first time. I thought, oh, I want to go to Italy. I don't necessarily want the beer, but I love Italian food. I want to go there. Please take me there. I beg you.
And you see this photo because it's personal to you. It's your family as well. And I like, you do say something, and excuse me for reading, guys, but I love what she wrote. Travel is good for your soul, and it can definitely make you feel more connected to your roots. And it's so true, because if you travel, like, let's say that you do have Italian, since that's the example we're using, you do have Italian. When you go there, you can travel and you can definitely taste things from the restaurants and things like that, but maybe you do an activity or excursion where you learn how to bake bread or make pasta in the region where your ancestors came from. Because as we know, Italy in particular, up north is more meat, and then down south towards Sicily is more fish. So depending on the region where you go, you might want to take an excursion or activity and actually learn how to make the cuisine of your ancestors. And to do that, to travel there and walk the streets and see maybe the stores, because a lot of these stores, these old stores, are still there, and know that maybe your grandparents shop there. So it's kind of cool. Travel.
Yeah, it's very possible For sure. I noticed that when I was in Paris. Places have been there forever, and it just like I felt so connected to my roots. Paris just was a very familiar city to me, and it's funny because it's like the first time I went to Paris, I actually took the Channel train from London to Paris, which was great. We got to Paris, I don't know, at night. I can remember 7 or 8 o'clock, and got into a cab once. Once I figured out how to get from there to the hotel, because it's like, I think we go in this line. Oh, there's people waiting in line for a taxi. All right, that makes a lot of sense. My rusty French. And I just remember the ride and just being able to recognize things just by looking at a map and feeling so home at Paris, and just looking at the different cafes and bakeries and chocolatiers and
There you go. You had to mention chocolate.
You gotta have French chocolate for sure. It's just travel. I know that people couldn't travel the first 2 years of the pandemic for sure. I had to for personal reasons, but it was not for fun. But now that people are kind of getting back into the swing of things, just travel, just do it. If you haven't traveled in a long time, do it. Try the food. Check out.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you don't have to spend a lot. If you want to and you can do it, then go across oceans, go further, do cruises, do airplanes, go and immerse yourself into different cultures. But you can do that within your own country, no matter where you're at. If you're in the United States or if you're in England, travel. Go in amongst your own country without a passport and travel and learn different cultures, different food cultures. We actually, it's funny. We talking about travel and cultures. Everybody knows Epcot, and they have different countries. One year, we were older. My husband and I are older. We didn't have our son with us at the time, and we said we don't want to ride the rides, so we went country to country to try the food. So even if it's Disney or something like that, try the food. Just get out there. And the cool thing about it for us, though, was we only had like something really little from each place, but we talked to the people that are from that country and asked them questions about their food, and they have so much pride to share the information. And it's the same thing in your own country. If you travel within your own country, it might be a farmer who's selling cheese. It could be a fruit stand, or you could be selling jams and jellies, whatever it is. And if you come to South in America, I guarantee you see a barbecue joint, we're talking to you about it. We're going to give you all the details as well. So I agree, just good travel. Now the next one, this one is really interesting to me, because growing up, I think we had a standard section, and I'm going to tell you what this next one is in just a second. But we had a standard section of non-standard food, I should say, and it was like, it was small. And nowadays it's exploded, and I'm talking about supermarkets, grocery stores. So as a kid, if you wanted to try something other than mayonnaise and peanut butter, you had a small little section to go to. Now there's supermarkets, huge ones dedicated to certain types of food. So Meli, tell us, how do we shop a supermarket for ingredients?
Well, I got really lucky in Los Angeles. It's a very, very international city. And whether I went to a supermarket or whether I went to Thai Town, for instance, I would be able to easily find ingredients. It depends on how it's laid out in a supermarket. Some will still just call it one umbrella as international foods. But, considering that the United States is such a melting pot, I kind of wish that term would go away forever, because there's a lot of people here who are from Thailand and from Italy, from China, from, Egypt now. There's Middle Eastern sections in supermarkets, which are fantastic too. I guess it depends on where you live. You're not going to have the bigger variety like you would like in LA or New York, for instance, but there's still things that you can still find if you just want to try it. And just, you take a look at a jar of something, like say something from Armenia, something that's pickled. And you're like, wow, that looks really good. I don't know what to do with it, but I need to try it just to taste it, just to say, this is really interesting. What can I do with it? How can I add it to a recipe? How can I just make it something different? And I think that's a good thing about a supermarket. There's more and more things to choose from now. And I'm always curious about certain things. If I see something that I don't know what it even says, maybe it's not even translated into English. If it looks interesting and if it looks spicy, I'm going to buy it just because I'm just going to take it home and I'm going to try it. So
You can try and see how you can, and it's a small investment. I know some people won't go into a restaurant because that's a big investment, and they're like, I don't know if I like the food, and I'm spending this money, and I don't want to do it. The supermarket gives you a great way to do it on a small investment, and I love what you said. Just get it, taste it,
great.
and see how you can put it into a recipe. I didn't connect that last part of that sentence. See how you can use it in your own recipe and kind of mix it up a little bit. I love that. That's a great idea. And I don't know about where everybody is, but I think it is really cool. Like you mentioned, we have these supermarkets around me. I'm in the Atlanta area, and I can find almost every cuisine in my normal grocery store, like little stuff. But I can also find almost every cuisine in a separate standalone grocery store. Some of them are quite large, and I can tell you that I enjoy the heck out of going to our local Indian supermarket. I can spend an hour there. I can go there and spend time in a grocery store than can any other store that's around. I like seeing things and touching things and looking at it and see. And I am one of those type of people, as you all know, I talk a lot. I will ask the person standing next to me, do you use this? What do you use it in? How do you make it? And that's just another way to connect with the community and culture of others and try their food. And we are, as you said, I know you said this is your soapbox. We are one world.
We are. We are. And Salt Lake is getting more and more diverse, which I think is great because my biggest fear was going to be really boring. The food is not going to be that great. But when I came here back in March for my first Roots Tech, I thought, wow, there's some interesting things here. This is a little more diverse than I thought. And sure enough, there are. It's like there's a Chinatown here. There's groceries for African cuisine. I think there's there's so many different things, and I'm really glad that there's choice. So if you want to try a new recipe, you want to try something different, or you just want to learn about it, and just ask whoever's working at whatever grocery store you end up going to, is this spicy? I like spicy. What can I use this for? How can I implement this in something? How can I make something different out of it? And they love telling you. Blue Lemon's, I just want to interject. Blue Lemon has been closed for a while now. I don't know when Blue Lemon is going to open again. And it's a tragedy because everybody at Roots Tech loves going to Blue Lemon. So FYI, they're closed for a while. Sorry, I saw Blue Lemon. I'm like, oh.
That's our public service announcement for you.
Yes. There's the food court nearby, which is really good. It's just going to take you a little more while to get there, when you go to Roots Tech.
Let's move on. The number 7, cooking classes. And again, now that COVID's over, we can get out and about, and some of these events and things like that are happening more. In my local grocery store chain, there is one of them that's near me that has actually cooking school built in where they'll offer those. And I think like Whole Foods offers them a lot and things like that.
Yeah, I actually worked at Whole Foods for a long time, and we had a lot of cooking classes, which were a lot of fun. And I helped out maybe 1 or 2 when I was working there. But yeah, even like Sur La Table, for instance, Williams-Sonoma may or may not have cooking classes, but they're out there. Community colleges will sometimes offer cooking classes, and it kind of gives you the opportunity to feel more comfortable in a kitchen if you're not necessarily a confident cook. I just love them though, just because they're a lot of fun. It's a very social thing to do. You get to try whatever you make, or just observe whatever a chef is explaining to you, and you try it then.
And then go back home and make it too. Now
exactly. Exactly. They usually will give you a handout of the recipes, and then if it's something that you really like, you just try it at home, take your time, and kind of explore with new ingredients, new cooking techniques. Cooking classes are amazing. I love them so much. And yeah, local libraries too.
We do too. It's amazing, and I think again that we're getting out and about more, and so you're going to find that I think people are going to get creative, especially restaurants are going to get a little creative and start offering things like this to make money, because they weren't making money during COVID, so they're trying to survive as well. So the next one is culinary influences.
Yes.
What is this about?
Okay, so
talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, there are so many cooking shows that I watched growing up, and of course, like I mentioned before, I'm addicted to the Food Network. So of course, Julia Child is the top of the list. She learned how to become a chef when she was older, and she just realized what her passion was. And being in France, of course, how can you not want to learn how to cook in France? I mean, come on, this is France we're talking about. Anthony Bourdain. I have a story.
He combined a lot of what you're talking about. Almost everything that you're talking about today can put an equal sign Anthony Bourdain.
Exactly. I just noticed you have a little puppy back there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I see an animal. I go, animal.
Lolo is always with me in every webcast.
Oh, so cute. I actually met him at a book signing in Seattle when I was going to culinary school. And he's so tall and so amazing. And he signed my book. He was recently divorced. And of course, I wrote a little letter to him. Like, if you want to go out for a drink sometime. And I also said, I go to the Art Institute of Seattle. I would love for you to stop by. So he did not call me, which made me really upset. For me. But apparently he did stop by the school. And
that's cool.
The problem was that I went to night school and he showed up in the day.
Well, at least you got him there.
Anthony Bourdain was here. I'm thinking, great. I just missed him by a few hours. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But I think we do. We do also have those influences that are outside of our parents, our grandparents, our family, our ancestors. And that's really cool too, to bring in their recipes and their ideas and to see what they're about. It, you see, I know you mentioned like Gordon Ramsay, and he's so fast, with the things he cooks. You don't have to be that fast. You can just watch and enjoy it. He has recipes that you can get too as well.
Yeah, Gordon Ramsay, I love him. I watch every single show that he has. And so, of course, this season, Hell's Kitchen is just like, I love his show so much. And I know a lot of times his persona changes depending on what show he's doing.
That's
Next
true.
Level Chef, I think, is the most accurate of him because he's very supportive. He's not going to drop the F-bomb every 5 seconds like he does in Hell's Kitchen. But he's a brilliant chef. I mean, he started out when he was, I don't know, like 19 years old because he got injured playing soccer and he couldn't be a soccer player.
Yeah, he started nothing. There was, there's no money in his family. So you're right. He started off very young and very poor.
He did. But yeah, I mean, there's so many people. I mean, Carla Hall is really cool. Alice Waters, James Beard, Marcus Samuelson, Martha Stewart. I mean, there's so many people.
You can get specific. You've got Duff with the Baltimore cake. So you can get really specific. You just like one topic or one type of cuisine, or you can get the full thing. Okay, so we just want to let everybody know that bingo is coming up after this presentation. We got 2 more. We're going to run through them real quick before we get to bingo. So number 9, and I am guilty of this. I bring everywhere I go, I bring something of this home to my son because he asked me to. Food souvenirs.
Yes. So I have a tendency to overshop for food souvenirs. I mean, we're talking about chocolates or candy, for instance, especially whenever I'm in London. Oh, that's all I ever want to do is just buy a bunch of crisps, chocolate, what have you, mustards. I love different kinds of mustards. But you have to be really careful what you bring back. You always have to look at the customs and make sure that you're not illegally bringing something over.
That's a really good point, too. And the next one is kind of what we're doing right now in a roundabout way. So if you have, your food of choice, you can see there's a biscuit behind me on top of the pickle jar. I am Appalachian, so that makes perfect sense. Social gatherings.
Yay! that's the fun part, especially for holidays, and especially because we were so lonely, the first 2 years of the pandemic, and you couldn't really even get together with friends or family for holidays or anything like that. Yeah, social gatherings are fantastic because sometimes you're able to kind of bring something and
see it, and when we talk about social gatherings, it can encompass everything Millie gave us. You could be traveling with them. I have gone on cruises with friends. I've gone on cruises with family. That's a social gathering for me. Could be your holiday dinners. That's a social gathering. Somebody has already mentioned as well the Sunday night dinner. That's a social gathering.
yes.
What happens if you meet Fridays after work, after a long week, you meet up with friends and you just might have a couple appetizers and a glass of wine or a beer? That's a social gathering as well. So almost everything that you've mentioned here can come back to in a social gathering. So
Absolutely.
I think this is cool. Now, I want to let you guys know there's a lot more detail that Melly gave us for these tips and these topics. I have put the link to her specific handout in the chat earlier, and it's also down in the description, so you can always come back and get that. Let's go ahead and do like a really quick speed round for bingo. And for those of you that are new to bingo, I have put the link in, so all you got to do is click on that link and a random card will come up with the words that Melly has given us. To win bingo, you need to get horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. And you will see right in the middle is the DNAChef's logo. So go ahead and click on that. That is a free space. Click on that now. If you click on a word accidentally, just click it again and it'll come off. The first person that wins bingo, or the person that actually wins bingo, is the first person who screams it at me in chat. So 5 of you could win bingo at the same time, but the first person who's quickest to say bingo, and feel free, yell at me, bingo, 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 because I get talking, is the person that wins. And you win a prize from the WikiTree store. We'll talk about that afterward. Cool. So if everybody's ready,
I got my Yukon mug here.
You're ready. You are set. Restaurants. Okay, so guys, we kind of talked about this already. And I just want to say that if you have it and you can do it, go to a restaurant, support your local restaurant, because they were hurting during COVID. We lost a tremendous amount of restaurants as well during COVID. They're still struggling. It's not over yet. They still have got a lot of money that they need to catch up on in bills. The bingo card has been put. It's up in the chat if you want, and you want to look at it. I'll drop it one more time, and then we're going to do the speed round here. Supermarkets. Again, we talked about this too, and I really am pleased to see that you could literally walk down an entire section, not just a row, not just a little section of a row, entire side almost of normal grocery stores and find things. But then you've got those specialty grocery stores, and then you've got those little ones. Like you said, you go to get kimchi at Trader Joe's. So yeah. you got to look and see. And it's really a low cost way to try out foods. And if you are 3% Swedish, you can probably find something in your supermarket to give it a try. Cookbooks. And we had a lot of people tell some of their favorites. And I think Joy of Cooking was one of the biggest ones that we have out there. For me, I like the old ratted, tatted ones I find at Goodwill, or, with those plastic ring binder thingies on the side, those really, that pinch if you get your finger cut. I like some of those. But Melly also mentioned cutting the recipe off boxes and things like that. Now, I do that too.
Oh, yeah.
Cuisine. I think that's the DNAChef is all about the cuisine.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A cuisine is just amazing. And I like to try everything. I don't think there's one cuisine that I don't like. There are more that I prefer over others, but I'm always willing to try something different just because I want to experience what that culture has to offer. And I just think that's a really good way to do it.
And you never know if you like it or not until you try. And you don't have to get the big meal. Maybe it's an appetizer size or could be just a dessert, something to try to kind of dip your toe into that culture. And
Right.
culinary influence, this is a big one. This is a pretty big topic.
Yeah, there's so many people. I mean, there's also a couple of genealogists that are out there who kind of inspired me. So there's Gina Philibert Ortega, who's amazing and so supportive. And then there's Michael W. Twitty, who just came out with a fantastic cookbook. He's awesome too. And I kind of call them like my main influences just because they really bridged genealogy and food together and kind of really inspired me to kind of create something or create a definition. Yeah, I'm just very grateful for both of them for sure. But so many chefs out there. It's
I think it's really cool. And why not? Why not combine your genealogy with your love of food?
exactly
And that brings us to foodies.
the snobby word.
Yeah. But it's not. It just means that you're adventurous. You want to try things. You're interested in it. Something intrigues you. It could be a recipe. It could be a smell. It could be
Yeah.
the look of something on a plate at the person's table next to you. Who knows?
Well, yeah, a good example is when I lived in the Boston area back in the early 90s, I went to a Mexican restaurant. And it wasn't a chain restaurant like Chi-Chi's or whatever. It was like an authentic Mexican restaurant. And I tried this chicken and rice soup, and the herb I was not familiar with. It tasted amazing. So I asked, I said, can you please tell me what's in this? And he said, oh, yeah, it's cilantro.
Ah.
And I'm like, cilantro? What is that? And it really opened up my taste buds and my thinking about Mexican cuisine and what real authentic Mexican cuisine is. And cilantro is my favorite herb. And it's been that way since the 90s for sure.
I love cilantro. I know some people love it or hate it, but
I know.
I really, really like it.
There's a gene about cilantro, for heaven's sake, which I think is
There is.
interesting. Yeah, it's like, oh, it tastes like soap. I don't know what kind of soap you guys
I
eat.
don't get that, but we are talking about DNA and cuisine and chef. So if you have that DNA where it does taste like soap, that's it, and that leads us right into ancestry. The ancestry could be where you went to get your DNA test, and you see what your DNA results are, what cultures you have, or it could be ancestries where your taste and your recipes come from your own personal ancestry as well.
Exactly. No, Ancestry is always fascinating. When I went to my first family reunion in Canada in the early 90s, it just kind of piqued my interest for genealogy in general. And I wanted to learn more about myself. And so I bought the family reunion book. And of course, now with DNA tests, it's even more accurate and more fascinating to kind of like learn where you're from. Yeah, it's so cool.
That's true. And I like that. You want to learn more about yourself. And I will tell you that I see through my family, if I say that, I see that through food. And that's the first thing that our culture has is food. And through food, we have celebrations, and we also have funerals. The food crosses all the way across, but the common ingredient is the people, the culture of the food. The next word is ingredients. And Kirby, I want to say thank you for giving the list. I didn't see Vicky's question, so thank you for giving the list of words. So ingredients, and I think this takeaway from me with this, Meli, is you get a jar, look at the ingredients, taste it, and see how you can make something in that jar that's new to you into something you're already making, or maybe you make something completely new as well. That's another option.
Absolutely, it's so much fun, and of course, flavors.
I mean, that's just. I mean, as you guys were saying what your grandparents made that you really, really love, I'm tasting the flavors, except that tongue sandwich. I'm sorry. That's the one that I'm not adventurous
Tongue
in.
is good when it's done right. It's a very tough cut though, but when you braise it properly and season it properly, it's going to be amazing.
It is, and it looks like we also have a bingo. And I think let me write this down. I believe that Kimberly, Crystal, you were so close. It looks like Kimberly got it just by a hair. And thank you for adding your WikiTree number too. I appreciate that. So congratulations, Kimberly. Let me tell you a little bit about what you get and how you get it. You're going to email Eowyn to claim your prize and tell her that you won the bingo with the DNAChef. She will send you all the details. You're going to get a tiny certificate to the WikiTree store. I want to say it's up to $30. A lot of cool stuff there that you can buy for $30. But Eowyn will give you all the information and the link to the store. Lots of things. The mugs, the mug that I have came from the store. There's tons and tons of things that you can get. And you got to email Eowyn and she'll let you know. I think we had one question throughout, and let's go ahead and do that before we wrap up. I have a question that maybe was not thought to be subject included here. Is there a possibility that because of our DNA transferred to us from our ancestors, we might like eating the same kind of food?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very possible for sure. I just think that, you know, we're going to inherit all kinds of things from our ancestors, and just we're going to be drawn to certain things naturally, I think, because you're going to grow up with certain foods, but at the same time, you're also going to be fascinated by other types of cuisines and other types of foods in general. DNA is just really fascinating. I wish I would learn more about just genetics in general. Like I follow a lot of genetics accounts on Twitter or X. Twitter, for God's sake. I definitely think there's a correlation between our ancestors' DNA and what we're kind of drawn to food-wise. But I think because we're also at a point in time where there's so much choice out there, even in smaller cities are becoming just more adventurous, I think, or becoming more diverse. And you're going to see representation there, whether it's in like I said, a small little supermarket or a little mom and pop restaurant, for instance. Yeah, it's genetics and DNA and just food. It's all good. It's all delicious.
You know, it can be. I know that Joki said that her sister and her different food tastes, and I can say that that's the same for my two brothers and myself. That we definitely have. There are some commonality that goes through. But the cool thing about that, and I'm going to leave you guys with this really cool story. As a kid, my one brother would take all his vegetables, and as soon as my mom and dad would leave the dinner table, he would take the plate and he would put the vegetables behind the buffet. I don't know how he did it. I saw him do it, but I don't know how he did it. When we moved, there was like this wall of growth of vegetables and stuff. So after he got in trouble for that, we made a deal. He gives me all his vegetables, and I was perfectly fine with that. So that's how sometimes within your own family, you're going to have different tastes, but make a deal with your siblings. That's the key to have it. Meli, thanks so much. This was awesome. I'm so happy to learn about the different cultures and how we are expanding globally to offer more and more flavors and cuisines. And I think I'm going to take your advice. Let's get out there. Let's go travel. Let's find some restaurants and flavors that we have never experienced before and try it out.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very humbled that I was part of WikiTree Symposium this year. And
we love it.
I'm going to see a whole bunch of you at Roots Tech. It's coming up before you know it. And I live really close. I have no excuse not to go there. I can literally walk there.
So we will. So if you're going to Roots, definitely look for Meli. And I'm sure that Meli will come back too. We've got another symposium next year too. So we'll have some topics because travel is available now. So it'll be fun. So thanks everybody for joining us. And thanks, Meli.
Yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.